The Auston Matthews extension news just came in, and it is perfect if you're a Habs fan. Auston Matthews signs for 4 years, over $13 million per year. The shorter-term commitment with this ton of money just lines up absolutely perfectly with the Montreal Canadiens plan, and we're going to be outlining all of that on this edition of Habs Digest. Jesse, let's get into this. It's a disaster for the Leafs, and it's great for the Habs, and here is why. Look, I understand. Is Auston Matthews worth $13 million in a vacuum? You know, a former Hart Trophy winner, Rocket Richard, with the cap going up? Who knows, right? It's tough to say that he is worth the most money in the NHL by almost $1 million more than Connor McDavid. Hard to say that. But he signed a 4-year, $13.25 million extension in Toronto. And Jesse, when I first saw this, the number that stood out immediately was maybe not the $13 million, because that's a number that's been thrown around a bit, but it's the 4-year commitment. And with the Habs being in the midst of a rebuild, ready to contend in maybe a few years down the line, and for Auston Matthews saying, like, listen, I'm giving the Leafs 4 more years, but after that, who knows? I think this is just like about as good as you can ask for if you're one of us.
Yeah, it's a kind of a win-win for the Habs in a lot of ways, right? If you're looking like Auston Matthews being a really big detriment to the Habs, well, we're not going to probably start solidly completing for, probably about 2 years from now. So that kind of gets into his tenure quite a bit. But you could also look at it from the other hand where just, this is another example. We all knew this was going to come where the Leafs players are kind of prioritizing themselves a little bit over the club, right? Where they're taking these shorter term deals. They're making less of a commitment to their club in comparison where we saw Suzuki and then Caufield with these really long-term 7 and 8 year extensions, right? So it really just speaks so much when he's just taking the most amount of money from his team that he basically can to the detriment of many other positions, right? Because they need that depth. So as a Habs fan, I'm really liking this because I'm really seeing it as being the change in the guard. And I think it'll be before that 4-year mark where, the Leafs kind of start to go down and then the Habs start going up. But I think that this is definitely a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point there with their depth, right? The Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, while we got to give them a bit of credit, they've done a solid job this offseason going out and getting some extra talent, especially scoring talent, someone like a Tyler Bertuzzi, right? To come in, maybe like a Max Domi to come in and play really well. But Auston Matthews eating up $13.25 million, at least for a full year overlap of John Tavares and Mitch Marner's contracts, and with William Nylander still yet to extend. You got to think they're going to run out of money sooner than later. They're already about $13 million over the cap, and now with only about $10 million on LTIR. They'll find a way to manage it, but you're right. It doesn't leave as much room as they'd maybe want for depth down the road. Now, if they can get someone like a Wall in net on a rookie kind of scale deal, that could help them a bit. But all in all, I just feel like they're running back the same plan. This, to me, indicates that Matthews is bought in. They still have Marner and Tavares for at least 2 more years, and they're probably now, at least I think, are going to extend Nylander, and maybe the hopes of Nylander to Montreal might not happen anymore, but Nylander's going to fetch about $10 million a year. So you got to think that Matthews did this with the mindset of, okay, we'll run it back for one final shot. But Jesse, like we said, this hasn't worked yet. Do you see a world where Toronto finally gets things to click within this Matthews contract?
No, I think that that's definitely been the issue. It's like you definitely need those superstars, right? But you need superstars that can kind of perform in the playoffs. And we don't want to start disparaging other players too much, but just Auston Matthews hasn't just shown us yet that he is that playoff performer, right? So taking such a big slice of the cake, it just means that Nylander, by suit is also going to ask for so much as well, which is really great for the Habs as well. You want to see them just investing just in these kind of, they're basically kicking a dead horse, just investing in these same sort of pieces time and time again, right? So you have to feel like a little bit more of a spread out approach is what really kind of works. Like, of course, the offense is great, but you need that all throughout the lineup, and I think they are doing things slowly of kind of realizing what they need. But for me, it's kind of a win-win just from, of course, he's going to get amazing numbers during the regular season, but it's really in the playoffs that matter. And we have players like Suzuki and Caufield who've shown they can be clutch in the playoffs. So these are the type of players that you really want to be investing in. Again, players that are putting the long-term interest. Suzuki, Caufield, they could have done a similar thing. They could have done more of a bridge, shorter-term deal and extracted the more amount of money, which is exactly what Matthews is kind of doing in this situation. So I feel like Matthews and Nylander, they're going to get the bag, but probably not the cup to go along with it.
I think you make a good point as well, as you always do, with like team commitment versus getting the bag as well. Like you can do both. But again, like when you look at cup winning teams, not a lot of them have gone out and got like a massive name free agent or signed a huge contract for a player to lead them to a victory. It just doesn't happen very much. Sometimes it does. Absolutely it does. But I mean, Vegas this year, for example, even they had Petro, who was a big free agency signing, helped them win a cup, but that's sort of an outlier in that case, right? And 13.25 for Auston Matthews. Now, Leafs fans are going to hate this if you're a Leafs fan and you're still watching, but like, do you really see Auston Matthews as worth almost twice as much as Cole Caufield? I mean, yes, Auston Matthews is a better defender. We're not going to pretend that Cole Caufield is some elite defender, and Auston Matthews has a Hart Trophy. He deserves a lot of money. But when you're looking at a team that's looking to build a championship roster, I feel like eating up that much space right now is just crazy. I understand the cap's going to go up, but is it really going to explode by so much that you're not looking at that as like, oh man, I don't know, that's a lot of money, right? I mean, and here's another thing. Auston Matthews is 25 years old. He'll be, 29, 30 by the time this contract, 30 years old by the time this contract ends. We already have Nick Suzuki signed until he's 30, and Cole Caufield, I think, until he's also 29 or 30. And those cap hits, again, Jesse, it's talking about if Auston Matthews had signed one of those earlier and didn't look for that big $11 million contract shorter term that he did, maybe the Leafs would be in a better position. So to me, this whole Auston Matthews saga, from the time he signed that first massive deal until now this new extension, it's kind of the antithesis of what Montreal is doing, whereas Montreal focused on getting their core guys who plan to be elite on long-term deals to be able to build a contender with a lot of extra salary flexibility instead of being handcuffed like the Leafs are right now.
That's so true. And you got to feel from like, if you're Auston Matthews, you have to know what the issue is with your team, right? And they even said it kind of like it was his teammate that said it just in the press conference at the end of the season. They were saying one of the other stars for them, Marner, where they're like, well, it's not just all on us. We need other players to perform, right? But for me, that's just, I don't want to use disparaging words again, but it just kind of comes across as just, not super enlightened, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's just like, that you're getting paid so much, and this is what's stopping you from getting these depth at these other positions. And you have the gall to kind of say that at the end of the year but this is the reason why we didn't win. It's like, in a way that it's like when you're putting all your eggs into one basket, this is the issue. So to kind of know what the issue is, and then to still kind of take that massive contract, more than Connor McDavid, more than Nathan McKinnon, for me is just, just a little bit more personal goals rather than team goals.
Now, let's be real at the end of this video here, right? Auston Matthews is an awesome player, right? If Auston Matthews was on the Habs and he was in the same situation, I don't know if I'd be upset with this contract, but I'm
not a fan.
You're not a fan? Let's pretend I didn't utter those words. But at the same time, like, look, he's a good player. He gets a lot of money. But honestly, I really think that for the Leafs' future and for the future of the Atlantic Division, I feel like long-term, if the Leafs get a cup within this contract, which they won't, but then maybe it's worth it. In any other outcome, it's not worth it. And I feel like you said, that's putting all your eggs in one basket. If you don't win a cup in this 4-year window, you're done. And that's not that long in the grand scheme of things, especially when you have a few guys like Marner and Tavares expiring after next year, or 2 years from now. Nylander expiring after this year. You got Bertuzzi and Domi on shorter-term contracts. They're just going to have to be a lot of moving parts with some crazy salary cap restrictions. And they need to go for broke, and that's what they're doing. But hey, if you're a fan of another team in the Atlantic Division that's on the rise like Montreal, I feel like this could not have possibly gone better. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10,000 subs, and we really appreciate your support. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.